everyone, and welcome to another video. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different from what I've been doing. Mostly I've been talking about books and things relating to literature, but in this video I am actually going to be talking about tips for college freshmen. I was a freshman in 2012. I now have both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, so I was a college student for a pretty long time. And one thing that I can tell you is that as a freshman, I had no clue what was in store for me. Now, it was a great experience. I loved my undergrad years. I loved my time in grad school. But as a freshman, here are some things that I wish I had known, and some of these were tips that I was given that were actually very helpful, and some are things that I wish somebody had told me. So without further ado, here are 10 tips that I have for my younger self and for anyone who's starting college for the first time. Number 1 is to set priorities. In college, there will be so many demands on your time, your money, your attention, your energy, from things like your classes, studying, homework, sometimes different classes competing with each other for that precious study time, your job if you're working, your friends, any student organizations that you're a part of. There are so many different competing responsibilities, and on top of that, you want to pay attention to things like getting enough exercise, getting a good night's sleep, things that will help you to maintain your health and personal well-being. So it's important to understand what the highest priorities for you are, and that might not be the same for everybody. I do strongly recommend, if you have a job, making your job a top priority, and whatever classes you're in, particularly classes in your major or your minor, making those a high priority. But as far as anything else, there are some people who it's really important for them to have alone time. I'm one of those people. I'm an introvert. It was really important to me, particularly as a freshman when I had a roommate in the same room as me, as opposed to in a different bedroom of an apartment. It was so important for me to have a little bit of time when I could just be by myself. On the other hand, you might be a really social person, you might be an extrovert, and maybe it's really important for you to do something fun with friends on a pretty regular basis. So that's a matter of knowing yourself, knowing what's important to you. Sometimes you have to prioritize your classes even. Sometimes I would figure out, okay, in this class my grade is borderline between an A and a B, and if I work really hard and I do really well on the final, I can make an A in this class. Whereas in another class, maybe I was already doing really well, and so yes, I would still study for that class, but it wouldn't be as high of a priority as the one where my grade was in question. Number 2 is really closely related, and that is time management. Because no matter how good you are about setting priorities, you will have weeks that are overwhelming. Finals week will be overwhelming. Midterms week, if there are a lot of classes that give a midterm, will be overwhelming. Use those time management skills that hopefully you've been learning, and if you haven't been learning time management up till this point, take the opportunity, because it's a skill that will serve you well throughout your life. So making a schedule can be really helpful. In spring of 2020, I was a grad student. I was working part-time from home 20 hours a week. I was taking classes from home, 3 classes, 3 semester hours each, and I had to be really careful about time management, because even though I was stuck in a studio apartment with nothing to do other than all of these responsibilities, you still need some kind of structure. And so what I did was I figured out, okay, what hours do I need to be working? Because I did have to, sign in and sign out for work. What projects do I have that are coming up due for class? Can I block off some time each day to work on class projects? What time do I need to wake up? What time do I need to go to bed? And I made sure to leave some time every day that was unscheduled. I would figure out what time I want to be done, whether that's the time that I finish working or whether I schedule some time for schoolwork after that, depending on what my schedule looked like. Another thing that is really helpful is making a daily checklist. You don't necessarily have to say that from 10:30 to 10:45 you're going to do the dishes. If you have do the dishes on your daily checklist and you happen to have some time available around 10:30, well, you can look at that daily checklist and you can say, okay, what do I have that I can get done in this period before I have to leave at 11? You find ways to fit things in, I think, when you have a list of what needs to get done, even if you don't plan it all out minute by minute or even hour by hour. So those are a couple of time management strategies that work for me. Different ones might work for you. It's a matter of just figuring out what works. It's up to you. But do learn how to manage your time. You will not regret learning that. It is a skill that you will use throughout college and throughout life. All right, tip number 3. Avoid unnecessary debt. I know student loans are a topic of frequent discussion. I'm not going to get into politics, whether I think that student loan debt should be canceled by the government. That's not really what this is about. But do really be careful when you're taking on student loans. I know that they're a necessity for a lot of people, and that is fine. Do what you need to pay for college. But if you're taking on debt, be smart about it. Have a plan to graduate in 4 years. Know what kind of money you're going to probably be making once you graduate. And don't borrow any more than you absolutely have to. Don't look at it as, oh, it's free money. When you're taking on debt, you want to be frugal about it. You want to only take the minimum that you need. You don't ever want to end up in a situation where you owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt that you'll never be able to pay back. Number 4, and this is something that will help you to avoid unnecessary debt, is working part-time. I actually didn't work as an undergrad, and that is one of my biggest regrets about my undergrad years. I worked part-time in grad school. It was a fantastic experience, and it really benefited, I think, my education and definitely to building a resume that helped me to get a job when I graduated. I am, in my life outside of YouTube, a librarian. And if I had worked part-time at my university's library as an undergrad, I would have, depending on when I started, possibly several more years of directly career-related experience to put on my resume. I also might have figured out my desired career path a whole lot sooner. I was very, very fortunate that I had a really good scholarship. I also received financial support from my mother, who was okay with me not working and focusing on my grades. I was in a situation where I did not have to work, but if I could go back in time and I could take a part-time job specifically at the university's library, I would do it. If you can find a part-time job that will work around your school schedule, which jobs on campus usually will, and is related in some way to what you want to do for your career, it is such a good experience, and I would strongly recommend that you do it whether or not you have to. Number 5 is to consider your major and your career goals. Now, you might go into college knowing exactly what you want to do. And if that is you, don't think that I'm saying that, oh, you'll change your mind, because most people do. I knew what I wanted to major in as soon as I stepped through the doors, and I got really irritated when people would say, oh, the majority changed their major. You'll probably change your major. For me, that was not the case. I started as a French major. I did consider changing my major to a couple of closely related things like English literature or linguistics, but in the end, what I decided to do was to minor in English, take some linguistics classes, and continue with the major that I had started with. I never considered anything outside of that world of languages and literature. That's what I was really passionate about. That's what I was really interested in. But if you don't know, if you're not sure about your major, or if, like me as a freshman, you know what you want to study, but you don't know how to turn it into a career, take time to think about it. Take a deep breath. Understand that you have time, and that there are resources in college that can help you. If you have a freshman seminar kind of course, University 101 or whatever it happens to be called at your school, there will probably be a unit on majors and careers. You can talk to your professor for that course about majors and careers. You can also go to your university's career center. They can give you some great advice. They can help you to prepare a resume. They can help you to look at potential careers, to try and match up your major with your career possibilities. So you don't have to know on day one, but you do need to be thinking about it, because by the time that you're a senior, hopefully you will know. Hopefully you will have, you'll definitely have chosen a major at that point, because you really can't graduate without one. And hopefully you will know what you might be interested in doing for a career. Number 6 is more of a practical tip. Consider living on campus. Now, this goes back to tip number 3, avoiding unnecessary debt. If you can live at home with your parents and you're okay with doing that and they're okay with you doing that, do that. That is a great way to save money. But if you can't, that's who I'm talking to here, the people that can't live at home with their parents. Either their parents are saying, you turned 18, time to move out, or they're going away to college, they're going to live in a different city or a different state, live on campus, at least for your freshman year. You'll be living with people that are most likely fellow freshmen, so they are new to the school as well. You'll often recognize the people that you encounter in the dorms, in your classes. It can just be really helpful to be living with other people who are fellow students. Another really good thing about living on campus is that, at least in my experience, you typically sign an individual lease with the university, meaning you and your roommates are not jointly responsible for the rent. You're responsible for your part of it. They agree how much you're going to pay. And even if your roommate moves out in the middle of the year, maybe they drop out, maybe they graduate, whatever the case may be, you pay your part of it. They find you another roommate if they can. Maybe there's a roommate conflict, or maybe someone is starting mid-year. But if they can't find you a new roommate, you continue to just pay your portion of the rent, and you continue to live there and not be responsible for your old roommate's part of the rent. And I speak from experience here. My roommate graduated halfway through our senior year. She graduated a semester before I did. We lived in an on-campus apartment, and I only had to pay half of our rent. I only had to pay my part. There are perks to living on campus. The other really good thing about living on campus is that you are literally a few minutes walk away from your classes. You don't have to drive anywhere. You don't have to walk from off campus. You don't have to catch a bus. You literally just wake up, get dressed, brush your teeth and everything, walk down the street, and there's the building your class is in. Number 7 is to let your professors know as soon as possible if you're struggling and you need help. There are a lot of people who wait until the end of the semester. At that point, they're not going to be very likely to want to help you, and even if they want to, often they really can't because you just waited too long. But if you go at the beginning of the semester, if you figure out in August or September, this is a difficult class for me, I'm going to need some help, you go to that professor's office hours, which are in their syllabus. They want you to let them know if you're struggling and need help, if you have questions, if you want to talk to them one-on-one about anything. That is what that is for. They'll be willing to help. They'll be willing to work with you much more if you reach out to them very early on, versus if you wait until November or December. Number 8, and I know textbook companies are not going to like me for this, but don't buy new textbooks if you can help it. Now, you might sometimes need to buy new textbooks. Sometimes it'll be a brand new edition and they just don't exist used yet. You might also be able to rent them though, even if it's a brand new edition. You might be able to rent it through the university bookstore, and you might be able to find a website online where you can rent it. If it's an older textbook, you can often find a used copy. Sometimes you can find a used previous edition, and you might be able to email the professor and ask, hey, are there any significant changes between the 5th edition and the 6th edition? Is it okay to use the 5th edition for your class? Now, it might be that, oh my goodness, the one chapter that they added is a big part of the curriculum, but in a lot of cases, the changes will be minimal. And of course, the truth of it is you won't keep most of your textbooks. Now, I will say, I kept a textbook from a 400 level French literature class. I kept my advanced French grammar textbook, and I kept several of my grad school textbooks that are directly related to what I'm doing now for my job. But for the most part, I don't have my Intro to Psychology textbook anymore, or my college algebra textbook. The vast majority of my textbooks I don't have anymore. Why? Because I'll never read them again. I'll never use them again. They were useful while I was in the course, but now they have gone on to be useful to some other student because I either returned them to where I rented them from or I sold them online. So keep in mind that you can do that. You can resell books, you can rent books. There are all kinds of options other than buying and keeping brand new textbooks. Number 9 is to stay true to yourself, but always be open to opportunities for growth and change. Now, that might sound a little bit contradictory, but hear me out. The person you are today as a college freshman is not the person you are going to be 4 years from now. And it shouldn't be. The purpose of college is for you to grow and mature and learn. If that is not happening, and if you are not changing significantly as a result of your time in college, you're not making the most of the opportunity. But at the same time, there will be so many options open to you. And there will be options open to you that maybe are not good choices for you. you have to decide what's important to you. You can be the person who spends 4 years going out to wild parties every night, studying a very minimal amount, if at all. That is not the same kind of experience that someone has who is spending most of their time studying, who is spending most of their time focusing on schoolwork, maybe even to the extent of sacrificing social opportunities for it. Those are two completely different paths, and those are kind of extremes. Maybe your path will fall somewhere in the middle, hopefully more toward the side of pursuing academics, though, because that is why you are in college. In a similar way, you see a lot of advice about how to be Christian in college, how to maintain your religious faith when you're going to a secular college, things like that. Personally, I'm a Christian, 6 years in public universities, still a believer to this day. You do not automatically lose your religious faith when you go to a secular college, but you do have to think about what's important to you, and you have to make choices based on what is important to you. Your faith will hopefully be stronger by the time that you graduate because you will be 4 years older and hopefully 4 years more mature. Another area where it's really important to stay true to yourself and to your priorities and your values and what you want out of life, but to also be open to change, is your major and your career goals. Maybe you go in with a really clear idea that you are going to be an elementary school teacher, but you start taking education classes and you start observing in schools and you realize maybe you don't actually want to work with young children. So you go back to why you wanted to be a teacher in the first place. There could be all kinds of reasons, and that might lead you to other possibilities. For instance, maybe if education is important to you, but working with young children is not for you, you could teach high school. If being in a helping profession is a priority, maybe consider nursing. There are so many different opportunities that will make use of your values and your skills and your interests. It's just a matter of figuring out which path to take, and in that, be true to yourself, be true to what you want for your life. Don't be influenced by people who tell you, oh, don't do this, or you've got to do this, or who think that they know better than you what will make you happy, but do be open to different possibilities that maybe you didn't think of before. And then finally, number 10, take all advice with a grain of salt, including this list. You are a college freshman, which means that you are going to have a lot of people telling you what you should do, trying to give you advice, trying to be helpful. Parents, friends, classmates, professors, other people at your university, strangers on the internet like myself. There's a lot of advice out there for college freshmen. And the thing is that you'll hear contradictory opinions and you will find things that really just don't work for you. Because what's good advice for one person, what works for one person may not work for another, and that is totally fine. One piece of advice that I was given when I was getting ready to start my freshman year was not to take books to college. I'm a reader. I love books. I cannot be without books. I'm a librarian, okay? There was no way that I was going to go without pleasure reading for a whole semester or a whole year, or definitely not a whole 4 years. And so I was like, no, I'm taking books to college. And what I did actually is I took one of those little shelves like you get to put above the sink to put the soap on and everything, and I got bookends, and I took about 10 or so of my favorite books to college with me. And I didn't read all of them my freshman year, but I did read some of them, and I was really glad to have them with me. Now, there would be other solutions to this problem, like a public library card, for instance, but my point is, if you see a piece of advice and you have a gut reaction against it, it's probably not right for you. Other advice that can really be very personal and more a matter of your priorities, your interests, anything relating to your major or your career. If you're a liberal arts major, you will hear a lot of people tell you to study something practical. And it's worth considering what you'll do with it for a career, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to write off your passion for sociology and go study computer science. It's just a matter of you have to figure out for yourself what's important to you, what kind of a life that you want. There will be a lot of advice relating to things like study tips as well. People know what works for them when they study, and they think that it'll work for you too. And the thing is that there are different learning styles, and not everybody learns in the same way. Not everybody uses the same techniques to remember things, and what works for someone else won't necessarily work for you. There are so many different ways to study, so don't let someone else's tips, which are really just what works for them, steer you away from doing something that works better for you. There are so many people that think they know what's best for you when you're a college freshman, but you're an adult now. So make choices based on your priorities, your goals, and what you know about yourself and what will work for you. I hope you liked this video. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a little bit different from what I normally do. Normally, I talk about reading and writing, so if you'd like to see more like that, or probably occasionally things like this, study tips, college tips, and so on, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I post at least once a week on Mondays, but occasionally I'll post twice a week on Thursdays as well. So feel free to subscribe and check back soon for another video.